Today we're speaking with Jerry Patton, a video industry professional and entrepreneur of over 40 years. He co-founded Classic Worldwide Productions, which was involved in shooting sports, live broadcast, as well as TV distribution, and he recently founded Classic Strategic Media, which does much the same, operating out of Independence, Ohio. We join Jerry in his studios as he recounts projects he was involved in, as well as the video industry in the early years, and many lessons that he's learned over the years producing for those who will come in the future. Well, today we're here with Jerry Patton, who is one of the founders of Classic Worldwide Productions, a production house in the Cleveland area for over 35 years. And Mr. Patton, as I understand it, you've held a variety of different positions within Classic Worldwide, and I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about what you did at Classic and what the organization did.
Classic Worldwide was really a tremendous company. I was one of the two founders initially. I have since closed that company in the last year, but I've opened a new one, Classic Strategic Media. But Classic Worldwide did everything. We did basketball games. We did the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Cincinnati Reds, the Cleveland Indians. We traveled our mobile units from San Diego to Wyoming to the East Coast to Florida, and actually took a mobile unit to Puerto Rico for Billy Graham. Actually, we started the company based on we had an opportunity at the very beginning to produce the Mickey Mouse Club Lassie reruns into a huge duplication facility. And we were going to start this in Pittsburgh and ended up buying all of the equipment from the Rex Humbard Foundation at the time and had it ready to move to Pittsburgh, and the client dropped out. Now this was at the time of 2-inch videotape, and what we did then was we said, we've already said we will buy the equipment, so that's our word. So we bought the equipment, started out and with duplication, rented some space, and made it work for a number of years.
I mean, it's interesting, you talk about 2-inch tape and back in the day, what things were like, because it's a vastly different industry now. But what was it like starting production back in the mid-'80s?
Well, I don't know about the back in the mid-'80s. I actually started in the 60s, where I worked at WOUB, Ohio University Broadcasting, and maybe something many of you don't know is that the first broadcast of some educational programs were done from an airplane flying over Dayton, Ohio, transmitting out of the airplane so that they could have educational training. By the time that the 80s came, and in 1983 when we incorporated, we were getting ready to go from 2-inch tape to 1-inch tape. And it was amazing, and we had something that no one had ever heard of, time code. You had time code where you could actually lock a picture and lock two machines together, or possibly even three. And we were really on the bleeding edge of some of that as it first started, with RCA cameras and RCA recorders, TR60s, and some Ampex 1200s, which were the 2-inch tapes. And to do some of the editing, what you used was a marker, and since the tapes ran at 15 inches per second, you would mark the tape, roll it back however many inches, and then play it. And if it was a little short, you would cut it, you would mark it an inch shorter, and then play it back so that you could have two tapes playing in sync. And we used, all the machines used air compressors. It was It was work. It was work. And the camera cables were £1 a foot. So if you had a 300-foot camera cable, TV81, it was work. And I was young, therefore I had the capability then. Today I would not.
How does that really compare to some of the things then? I mean, looking back at the 60s and then stepping up to the 80s, how did the machines compare? Did they get smaller?
Literally, when the 60s, very few things were actually recorded much, other than recorded on film and some tape machines. A big tape machine that would take a forklift to move. But most things were recorded on film and a telecine. An example, the Merlin the Magician show, its opening was a film that ran every time. And into even the late 70s and early 80s, most of the TV stations ran all their commercials on film. And everything was 16 millimeter film for the broadcast stations.
When Classic started, or when you incorporated, were there a lot of other houses that you were competing with at the time, or was it a very clear market?
When we first started, we started relatively big. We started out with 11 2-inch tape machines. That was a huge amount. And through that, the capability of providing syndicated programs that could be shipped across the nation via REA Express, because there was no Federal Express, there was really no UPS. Everything went by Railroad Express, or Association is what it was called. And we would have carts that would carry 30 tapes, and we would ship probably around 600 tapes per week, and we would end up working 24 hours a day. And when Classic first started, within 2 years or 3 years, we had 70 full-time employees. And we moved into a 25,000 square foot building, and 24 hours a day working, and 5 edit suites. It was busy. It was busy.
I mean, working in and around Cleveland, Cleveland's a very large city, and I know it was back at that time also. But who largely were the clients that would look for video production services?
Well, primarily we did a lot of work for Goodyear. We did a lot of work for Sealy, which was in town at the time as it initially started. Later they moved to North Carolina, and I'm glad to say they came back and still did production work with us. We did a lot of sporting events, but we really became the regional supporter, the regional distribution, the regional mobile unit facility that could provide for anyone. One of the interesting things is Goodyear at one time wanted a host for their anniversary that was coming up. And we had worked a lot with David Frost, interviews around the world. And what we did is we asked David Frost, and David Frost talked to us and said, yes, he would do it for, I think it was $75,000 and airfare from London and all of this craziness. Well, we said, that's nice, but there's someone that once worked for Goodyear. Years ago, Walter Cronkite came in. He spoke, he did a great job. We recorded him at the Science Center at the Goodyear World Headquarters, and it costs less. And how did we get Walter Cronkite? We ask. Remember, no talent has full-time work. And this is all a windfall. You'll never get the talent to come in unless you ask them and determine what the price is, and if it's worth it, it becomes good for both parties. Kind of interesting. And at least I remembered Walter Cronkite's name.
Kind of thinking back on some of those other jobs that you've worked on, is there anything else that really stands out in your mind? I think I recall you showing me pictures of you going over to the Gulf and working with certain presidents and things like that. Can you tell me any about those, how that happened?
Actually, we were in a bidding contest for a series called The Next President with David Frost. And what we did is, at the time, as far as the equipment that was coming out, most everyone was recording on Beta. And it was not even Beta SP at the time, but they finally got to Beta SP, and it was in 20-minute recording. Well, we found a way to record on a Panasonic format at the time that was 60 minutes or 90 minutes of recording that we could do. And that way, when David Frost was doing the interview, he didn't have to stop every 20 minutes or 15 minutes and start everything in and sync everything up and make sure that it was good again. So he was able to go consistently. From that, we ended up literally traveling into Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and recording Norm Schwarzkopf after the war. We ended up recording Warren Beatty. We recorded Andrew Lloyd Webber in London. We came back and posted all of those series that were aired on public television. WETA ended up being the sponsoring station for that entire series. And it was amazing, the number of people that saw it, recognized it, and it was a great experience for us and for our crew.
I mean, it's a lot of big names that you mentioned there. How do you get talent like that to recognize you? Do you just go out and ask, or do you find it's a lot of word of mouth? You get to know one person and then the next?
It is mostly word of mouth. If you do a great job each time, if you're fair to what you say you're going to do, if you get the best skilled individuals to do the job. We would often fly a lighting director in from Texas or LA or New York or different locations for different events. The talent we would get, whether it's voiceover or on-camera talent, was the top-notch talent. When you're getting good talent, you can make it go quickly. You don't have to do it over and over again. We did a series that was called The Magic of Television with Channel 5, a Scripps-Howard station, and Lee Jordan came in and we did all of the miracles. We made it rain in the studio, and we made a golf bag turn into a beautiful lady, and we made all of the computer animation jump out at you, and all of these things. And I had probably 30 seconds worth of that I'm going to interact with Lee Jordan. I am like Joe that worked for the circus cleaning up after the elephants. It is so much better to be behind the camera and behind the elephants than it is in front of the camera.
With a lot of individuals, I mean, if there's 70 employees within classic operation, each person is doing something a little different. How did you stay on top of all of the video projects that you had running concurrently?
Good people doing so many different things. We had several different directors that were directing different projects. We had a duplication manager, we had a traffic manager, we had a shipping manager. We also had the blessings of having many interns, some that turned out absolutely great, from being directors at Warner Brothers to owning the largest editing facility in the nation. Bill Durande is probably the one individual who really made it extremely big, because he was the editor for American Idol for each of the first seasons, senior editor, directed some of the programs, and a capable young man. Just, I have admiration for him. Just those that are willing to do and take the step forward, blessings to them.
I'm sure that allows many of the individuals that you work with stay with you or continue to help or help others in the area as well.
I think they do. I think what happens in the market we have, even though we're a relatively large market, we're really a small market compared to what number of people can do. And I believe in what is called the golden handcuff. That is, if an employee does a great job, he should be paid well. But you can pay him well for the position that he's in. But after that point, depending upon the market you're in, you cannot continue to pay. And those individuals have the opportunity to go make more money, do other things. And some of them stay. Some of them go into the corporate world where they can work 8 to 5 or sometimes less hours, have weekends off. This industry is not a kind mistress. It's difficult for lifetime and for many families to stay together. And that's one of the sad parts of our industry that calls on people and needs them. All of the sporting events basically happen on weekends. All the big events happen on weekends. And of course, you can't take your family with you all the time, and especially when you're working 18-hour days for that period of time.
Understanding that, I mean, you have a family yourself, how did you often juggle kind of those competing interests between work and family?
Not as well as I would like to say I did. My wife, my son, my daughter, what great individuals. How they put up with some of it, but I tried to be to the events that were necessary to be to. I tried to work hard, and on some of the trips of even before Classic Worldwide started and after, we were able to take them on those trips and do a couple of things and then have a little bit of time. At least they had some time, not that I had a lot of time.
Well, I guess looking back at some of the jobs that you have done and been involved in, seeing those, I guess, are there any sort of takeaway production lessons that you've learned from having to produce such a variety of projects? Whether it's sort of organizing and keeping the pieces lined up, keeping the people in place. Is there anything that really jumps out at you?
I think that the client often knows what they wish. Okay, the goal should really be to help them find what they wish, help them achieve that, provide ideas. They don't come to one to get they don't want to come for a clerk typist. They want for someone that will provide additional ideas to make it better. Doesn't have to cost more, but how can we make it better? We want to make it better. And if you can make the project better, try to stay within budget, smile at people. No one wants to work with a grump. You must be positive, aggressive with a smile. You must make things happen. You want to be able to have the equipment to do the job. If you don't have it, you should be able to find it. It's really the yes I can attitude. I can make this happen if I do these things.
Interesting. I know I've seen this often in the little bit of experience I've had where there are a lot of technical requirements and there's a lot of technical know-how that you have to have. But to me, it seems like really working in this field is basically all about people. And not only do you need to know the cameras and lights, you need to know it so well you don't even think about it. And really, again, it becomes that interaction with the client or whoever you're working with.
I think that is true to a point. If you don't understand what the editor is going to go through, what is going to be needed for graphics afterward, what is the animation, how it will work, what the colors will be, will this work, is that a good background, is it not? If you don't consider those things, and if you plug into the wrong place and halfway through the shoot, your power goes out completely, no one is going to be happy. So you have to have the technical as well as the personality. And the personality really is the salesman, the opportunity to do more. No one wants to work with a grump, no matter what. They might say he's a great guy, he can do the job, but I just can't stand it.
I mean, it's helpful. You certainly need the technical side. If you're either late to work or you're a sourpuss for the first 3 hours of the morning, you're not going to be working for very long.
Absolutely, absolutely.
With so much availability of equipment that's out there, I mean, you can pick up a camera relatively cheaply. You can pick up a set of lights pretty quickly, easily. I think it comes down to what you end up doing with those tools and how you're telling a story, how you're working, what projects you're creating. But sort of with that in mind, what is some of the advice that you would give to someone who's trying to break into this industry and get involved in video production? Is it something they just have to kind of keep working at and they've got to practice with on a regular basis, or is it just something that's in the person and you need a certain gut instinct to be able to do it?
All of the equipment is basically the same. There might be a different knob or a different menu or a different way to handle or get to that situation, except you must understand the basics of it. Now, I have said that for a number of years. Some of the youth of today doesn't understand here's what a video level should be and why, or whether it's blossoming out or why. You have to understand and do your research on what lighting really is and what ISOs are and ASAs and exposure and aperture, and you have to understand those at least minimally. You have to understand the tools that you're going to use. If you have an interesting story, whether it's picking potatoes or slaughtering chickens or doing the most aesthetical music painting some way, if you don't treat it properly, it won't work. It's how you shoot, whether it's better to go tight, zoom tight, or actually move tight. And usually the case is to move tight, okay, because that way the focus works. There's so many different things that they should still learn from the older generations that are telling them and why the lighting looks good and why it doesn't. They've seen it for all their life, but they don't know why. It's good to learn the reason why. We're sending 40 different types of files for any one program. It is a time-consuming function, and it has to be done right. And it has to be, whether it's drop frame or non-drop frame, whether it's 1080i, 30 frames per second if it's progressive, and even 1080 progressive, or is it 720p, is it 59.94, 29.97? You have to have that understanding of what's going on. The kids today, many of them don't do their homework. If you're a camera person, you should know your camera forward and backward. You should know the manual, you should know how it works and why it works. If you know that, you become a star. If you're not a star, you'll be an also-ran. Like in a horse race, you'll be the horses that ran and never made any money. If you're going to be the director, you've got to understand what they have to do and how long it's going to take them to do something. I think often people say, well, it's a 30-second spot. We'll give you 15 minutes, we'll come in and record it and it's done. I have worked a week on a 30-second spot just shooting in the studio. So it takes time. It takes time. And time is money. And example, like movies, they may bring 40 people in. Why? Because time is money. And 20 of those people may be sitting part of the time, but when it's time to move the set, they're there. And you have to have that capability.
Seeing that you've been in the industry for as long as you have, I'm sure there's probably a lot of things that you enjoy about your job and probably a lot of things that you don't enjoy about your job, but if you could pick out one thing, what is it that gets you up in the morning?
What I enjoy most, given an opportunity, is to show others a way that they can make a good living, develop skills that will help them advance their career, their family life, and also there's a number of good religious organizations that we can help by just providing some advice for. I've worked with the synagogues, the Catholic churches, the Protestants, the evangelicals, the Pentecostals. God's word will not come back void. Okay, I won't present it the way some do, but that's really the important part, is when we have an opportunity to tell others what really makes our heart work.
You know, with so many of the employees you work with down through the years, you have a patented list of laws of success, Mr. Patton. So can you run us through that? What are those 7 laws?
Well, I call them Jerry Patton's 7 guarantees of success. The first one is instant obedience. Now, that's not doing what your boss says or what your wife says or what your husband says immediately, or dad or mom. That is doing what our good Lord tells us is right. We know whether we're driving too fast before we get a ticket. We know whether our language is proper or not. All of those things that we know are right, if we do those first, we're a long way into being successful. Number 2, being positive, aggressive with a smile. If you're positive and smile all the time and accomplish nothing, no one really wants to work with you. If you're aggressive all the time and hard to get along with, no one wants to work with you. But if you're positive, aggressive with a smile, everyone wants to work with you because you're a doer. You can accomplish things. You make things happen. You're not a person that stands around with hands in the pockets. You are someone that makes things happen. Okay, number 3 is have the answers to the questions before the questions are asked. It's sometimes difficult, but not always. If you go to your boss and say, we have a problem, but I have a solution, you win, because the boss will say, well, take care of it. That's what the boss wants to hear. That's what the teacher wants to hear. Take care of it. Number 4, whatever you do, walk, talk, and act the part. Let's say that you're going to meet with Garth Brooks. It's okay to wear a cowboy hat and jeans, but if you're going to the opera, it's a tuxedo or a black cocktail dress. Incidentally, I do not look too good in a black cocktail dress, just in case you wonder. Okay, number 5, you want to think bigger than anyone else. Okay, no one comes in to talk to an entrepreneur about thinking little. You want to think big. How can I make things happen? So then another important factor is do it the way the boss would do it. If the boss is a cheapskate, you've got to be a cheapskate. If the boss would send a limo after the talent, you send a limo after the talent. How can you ever be considered wrong if you would do it the way he or she would want it done? Now that's also with the understanding that it's morally correct. If it's immoral, everything goes out the window. Okay, and the last, probably the 2 most important, number 1 and number 7. Number 1, instant obedience. Number 7 is, yes, I can. Can you drive an 18-wheeler? Yes, I can if someone will show me how. Can you fly an airplane? Yes, I can if someone will show me how. At 50 years old, I became a pilot. Why? Because I can. That was one of the wonderful things of life. You always need to have that attitude, yes, I can. As long as they say, yes, I can, They can give me the option of which priority I want to set. Yes, I can, but I can't do it in 10 hours. Well, if you had some additional help, could you do it in 10 hours? Okay, here, yes, I can. So that's really the 7 guarantees of success. But there's one other responsibility, and that is what every parent has, what every employer has, and what every friend has. And that is to leave you with hope. If you don't have a hope of getting an attaboy or an attagirl or a great job, your spirit dies. If your spirit dies, you become worthless to yourself and to those around you. We have a responsibility never to let others' spirit die. That's, I think that's crucial. That's so important.
Jerry, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate all of the insight that you brought, both from the video industry standpoint, but then just also all the lessons that you've been able to teach us as well. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for putting me in this predicament. Thank you.